everyone, and welcome to the GSMC College Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. We have a great show for you today. We're going to start first off with the NFL Combine is this week. We will get some early takeaways, take you through the schedule of everything going on this week. It's a big week, obviously a week where we get to kind of blur the lines between college and NFL, which I like a lot. And then we have Nick Saban made some interesting comments late last week about the state of college football and how he wants to be a part of possibly changing that in the future. And then we will get into some 2024 breakout candidates on the defensive side of the ball. Tons of guys that are going under the radar right now that I'd love to talk about. And then finally, we will get into some Good Vibe Monday. We will get into some updates about the NFL or the NCAA college football game, and then we will have a little bit of a surprise for everyone towards the end, so definitely stick around for that. But before we start, I do want to remind you all that we get tons of questions throughout the show, and the best way for us to see those questions and answer them promptly is for you to use the link at the bottom of the screen, streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. It's a huge help not only to us here at the network, but to you all to see your questions on the screen and then me be able to answer them. We can have a fun little back and forth here. But let's get underway, why don't we? This is obviously a very, very fun week. Oh, before we start, actually, I do want to apologize for any technical difficulties on Thursday and Friday of last week. Definitely on my end, but got that handled over the weekend, and we should be good to go from here on forward. So let's jump right in, why don't we? It's NFL Combine week, which is a huge week for so many different guys across the country, especially the guys up top, right? The three quarterbacks that are kind of setting the pace here. We did have news break the last this morning and last night that Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels will not be participating in testing throughout the Combine, but they will be there to go through interviews and things of that nature. So obviously not quite as fun as we were hoping. We were hoping to see both those guys show what makes them special, and a lot of people wanted to see Jaden Daniels run the 40-yard dash. I personally don't think he has to. The teams know how fast he is, but definitely takes a little bit away from this week, but still tons of guys that are going to be super fun to watch. And it's a fun time of year, obviously. I get to talk about NFL even though I'm a college football guy, which is something I love to do, and excited to get through this, go through this week with you all. But the start of today, D linemen and linebackers reported a little bit yesterday, but mostly we'll report today and go through examinations. We'll go through orientation, things of that nature, and some DBs and tight ends will start to report this week, and that kind of brings us to the specific groups that people are going to be working in throughout the week. So obviously D linemen and linebackers will start it off. They will have their first actual on-field workouts on Thursday, which is when all the stuff will really, really kick off, and we'll have concrete things to talk about, really. But the D-line and linebackers will start the week, and they will kind of set the pace for everyone else. And then we have DBs and tight ends right after them. Then we have running backs, quarterbacks, and wide receivers as a group that will follow them. And then O-linemen and place kickers and special teamers will follow after that, which I just love that they put O-linemen and special teamers on the same day because it's a fun juxtaposition there. But D-linemen and linebackers are obviously going through orientation and team interviews today. They'll go through team interviews throughout the entire week, and there's tons of very, very interesting D-line and linebacker prospects that will be very interesting to go through. Throughout the week here, we will do kind of a breakdown per day on different guys to watch. So tomorrow we'll start with the D linemen and linebackers. Then we'll get DB and tight ends on Wednesday, running back, quarterback, wide receivers Thursday, and then O linemen and place kickers and special teamers on Friday. So kind of a packed week of combine stuff, but it's a very fun week, obviously, for sports fans in general to see a lot of the guys they've been watching for a really long time at the college level find their way to the NFL level, and it's a huge week for so many different guys. Even before the on-field stuff starts, obviously, you have interviews, you have physicals, you have tons of stuff that go on throughout the week, and there's a couple of guys coming into this with some injuries that teams want to know about really, really badly. I think two guys that kind of stand out is Cooper DeJean, who will not participate and not test, which makes sense. He had a leg injury in the late part of last year. Excuse me, I did not put up the lower third graphic. I apologize for that. But Cooper DeJean will not participate in the combine, which obviously stinks. A uber athlete, a guy that a lot of people were excited to see test because he could be absolutely off the charts. The dude is incredibly fast, incredibly instinctive, and punt return, plays corner at an elite level, does a ton of things really, really well. So upsetting to not see him test, obviously, but still a guy that teams are going to learn a ton about this week, particularly with that injury. They want to know the severity. They want to know how long it's going to keep him out of the mix of things. They want to know, the severity of everything going on around that. And then obviously interviews mean a ton to these teams. Getting to see these guys face to face, getting their responses to some very important questions leading up to draft day is obviously super important. Another guy going through an injury that is someone to watch is Jonathan Brooks, the running back out of Texas. He's someone that there's a lot of guys throughout the industry that have him as the RB1 in this class, and he is coming off a ACL tear. So tons of teams will be very interested to know what's going on there. I did read a report that the doctor that did his surgery, is actually connected to the Cowboys, so they might have some intel that other teams don't as of right now. But every team will be able to see exactly where he is in the recovery process and see how quickly he can get up to speed, because he is obviously someone that teams expect to be part of the mix for whatever team he gets drafted to next year. Obviously, running backs, you lean on the younger side when you're divvying up carries and all of that type of stuff. So, and I think running backs are kind of slowly having a little bit of renaissance here with some new guys, Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs, absolutely lighting the world on fire as rookies last year. I think it helps a ton, obviously. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens with Jonathan Brooks, not only this week, but going into the draft. Seeing where he's taken will be a very interesting thing for the rest of the running backs in this group. But I've been saying it for about a year now as we've kind of gone through last year's draft leading up to this year's college football season, and throughout the season, this is a remarkably talented class, pretty much top to bottom. Safeties are a little bit thinner than they have been in previous years, or a lot a bit thinner if I'm being totally honest, but pretty much across the board, other than that, there are incredibly talented guys. Wide receiver and D-end are remarkably deep classes that have tons of guys that are going to make a ton of teams very, very happy. Obviously, you have the three incredible quarterbacks in Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and Caleb Williams, who is expected to go number one overall. And then you have the three incredible wide receivers. You have Marvin Harrison Jr., which is the one everyone wants to see this week, obviously, just an incredible athlete. And then you have Rome Odunze and you have Malik Neighbors. All three guys probably will go in the top 10. Will be very interesting to see what all they do, first of all, but also just what they test at, because Marvin Harrison Jr., I can't imagine there's a reality where he's not off the charts in pretty much every single category. This guy is built as great as you possibly could get a wide receiver to be built. So very interesting guy to watch throughout this week. I know that's the guy that everyone's going to have their eyes on during this weekend to see what he does at the 40-yard dash and just kind of his measurements, because he is a freak in every sense of the word. And then you have two offensive linemen that are just incredible. Olu Fashanu from Penn State, and then Joe Alt from Notre Dame. Both very talented guys. Both a little bit different in the way that they play, but both incredibly talented, athletic, can play inside and outside. So very excited to see what they do this week. I think a lot of teams will be very interested to get interviews with them. I think they've been mock drafted at somewhere around the 7 to 8 mark, maybe 6. So tons of guys in the top 10 that will have immediate effects. Obviously, these three quarterbacks are the one everyone's talking about leading up to this, but with two of them not participating in drills throughout the combine week, It'll give more shine to guys like Drake May and guys like Michael Penix, who I'll talk about in a little bit here. And one of the fun things that we get to see leading up to the NFL Combine is Bruce Feldman from CBS Sports releases Freaks of the Draft, which is always really fun. There's tons of guys that absolutely are just, freaks of nature in every sense of the word, and can uh, measure absolutely off the charts this week. So very excited to see these guys. He had Chop Robinson number one. I cannot argue with that. That dude is insane. I cannot wait to see what he does in the 40-yard dash and the bench press and all of this stuff. I think he's going to be off the charts, incredible. We'll be able to see tons of guys show off what they're capable of. Quinyon Mitchell, cornerback from Toledo, super talented, had really turned heads at the Senior Bowl about a month ago, and I think there's a lot of teams that are very excited to see what he can do. And then a guy that was a little bit lower on his list, but I'm very excited to see, is Trevin Wallace from Kentucky. Just super, super fast, can play sideline to sideline. So I think his 40-yard dash will be a very interesting number to see because he can absolutely fly. He also talked about Jalen Wright, who apparently while in college clocked at 23.6 miles an hour, which is just insane. It's absolutely wild that someone can reach that speed with pads on. So whatever his 40 time is, it's going to be insane. And then Roman Wilson, who blew up at the senior day as well, just a very polished receiver, can do a number of different things, has a very diverse route tree, which obviously helps with his stock. And then he also talked about Byron Murphy, who was in his top three along with Chop Robinson and Quinyon Mitchell. And this is a guy that is, I mean, I got to watch him up close being a Texas fan, but Byron Murphy can do everything that you want him to do, right? He can play run defense really well. He can pass rush really well from the inside, which is something not a lot of kids from college had the capability of doing. So I think he's someone that will find his way into the first round, but obviously a lot of that gets decided this week. So it'll be interesting to see how he works. I think this time of year, just in general, is a very, very cool time for these athletes. It's the first time in a very, very long time in their athletic career where they're kind of on an individual stage, right? For the last 4 years or 3 years, they've been tied to a program, and then before that, it was a high school, and then before that, it was a peewee team or whatever. So they finally get to kind of stand on their own, show what they're capable of, individually, and it's always a very interesting thing to see different guys, whether they test great or test poorly, see how they kind of develop at the next level because as we know, the combine is not an end-all be-all. A lot of the measurements we've gotten throughout the years have been, not necessarily super indicative of what actually happens on the field. But at the end of the day, it's a good moniker to get an idea of what these guys are capable of and what these guys could possibly be at the next level. So I think is a super fun time of year. Obviously, Bruce Feldman's Freaks always makes it a little bit more fun, gives us something fun to talk about. But I have a couple other guys that might not necessarily be the freaks that he described in his article, but there are some tons of guys that have a ton to gain throughout this week, and we'll kind of go team by team here, and a couple of guys per team. We'll start with Texas. Tavondre Sweat and Xavier Worthy. Tavondre Sweat obviously was Byron Murphy's running partner throughout the year. A guy that won the Outland Trophy, had probably better numbers throughout the year than Byron Murphy did, but is, bigger and a little bit slower from the general sense. Still a plenty fast guy for being 360 pounds. But he is someone definitely to watch because it feels like there are a lot of teams that are very widely spread out on Tavondre Sweat. And then Xavier Worthy is an uber fast guy. We know that. But he can prove a lot to a lot of teams if he can be very sure-handed this week, run routes very efficiently, which is something that he does incredibly well. So he's someone that I'm very excited to see test because he could, bounce up and down the boards a lot this week, I think. And then Malik Neighbors, we talked about him a little bit earlier. He's one of the guys that everyone's going to have their eyes on because he is as complete of a receiver as there is in this class. I think the three guys up top are as good as it gets, really. So very excited to see all of those guys test, but especially Malik Neighbors. because I think he is so complete. He can do a number of things really well, and will be right up there when you have like the raw athletic score that a lot of people put out there. And then Mason Smith on the defensive side of the ball for LSU, he needs to show out. He's someone that I talked about a little bit. I think he left 1 year too early, but he could prove a lot of people wrong this week. So very excited to see him test a very good athlete, a very talented player, but didn't quite have the production in college that a lot of people were expecting. But very excited to see what he can do this week. And then for Georgia, you have Lad McConkey and Javon Bullard. Lad McConkey has kind of started to show up on more and more big boards, people realizing just how good he is. But I think this week is going to open even more people's eyes than the Senior Bowl and other things have. This dude is super complete at the receiver position, has as good of hands as anyone in the entire country. So very excited to see him test. And then Javon Bullard, I talked about how thin the safety class really was. He might be one of the best or the best safety in the entire class. So he's definitely someone to watch, someone that could, really shoot up the boards to the, early third, maybe late second round if he can really test very well. And then we have two defensive guys for Penn State, Kalen King and Adisa Isaac. Kalen King, a very, very talented corner that can do a number of different things in coverage, but he will probably, be that classic coverage corner that we've seen throughout NFL's history. Very excited to see what he can do this week. And then Adisa Isaac is an edge. One of the, I talked about how deep this edge class was. He's one of those guys that could go in the second or third round, but be an immediate impact guy at the next level. So very excited to see what he can do. And then two quarterbacks that have a ton to gain, especially with Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams not going through workouts. Michael Penix Jr. has said he is going to throw this week, and it's something that a lot of teams are going to want to see because this dude can sling the ball all over the field. And then J.J. McCarthy has a ton to gain from this week. Interested to see what he can do, what he can show teams throughout the week. And I think he will have a ton to gain because that quarterback 4 position is wide open. So we'll see who can kind of jump into that role. A lot of teams have liked J.J. McCarthy throughout the process, but we'll see what he does this week. But that's just the start of Combine Week. We have tons still to come with, I'll break down, D linemen and linebackers to watch tomorrow, and then we'll go through the different position groups and break down some interesting guys to watch. So very excited to see what happens throughout this week. It's always a really, really fun week, as I said. But we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Nick Saban and some of the comments he's had about the different states of college football. So stick with us, and we will be right back.